NOTUS is a podcast from NOTUS, hosted by Reese Gorman and presented by BP.
What's the explanation for redacting the names of powerful men, of men in business, some billionaires that we know of? Why are their names redacted where they are not survivors or victims?
Hi, I'm Reese Gorman, the host of On Notice. Today, we're talking to Congressman Robert Garcia, a Democrat from California. If you watch cable TV or spend much time on X, he is probably a familiar face. He's been in Congress since 2023 and was the mayor of Long Beach before that. Notably, he is the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, a powerful committee on the Hill that has recently been focusing on the Epstein files. He's also the only member of Congress to have appeared on Watch What Happens Live with Andy Cohen, and is a Real Housewife superfan. We will talk with him right after a short break.
Behind the delivery trucks that keep your life stocked, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People bringing a new offshore production platform online. People making our refineries capable of more, like making renewable diesel from agricultural waste. People trading and shipping fuels to our customers. And people helping truckers fill up and get maintenance at our convenient locations. They're part of almost 300,000 jobs we support across the country. Just a few of the ways BP is investing in America.
Congressman Robert Garcia, the ranking member on the House Oversight Committee, thank you so much for joining us today. You are on notice. I want to start on an issue that you've been on the forefront of. You've been very passionate about, and that's the Epstein files and getting those released. You went to the DOJ today to review the documents, the unredacted versions. Did you learn anything from that today?
I did. Look, two things I think are really important. The first is it's very clear that the documents that were presented to Congress are highly over-redacted. Even if you compare the same document that was released to the public and then the version that was supposed to be unredacted, many of the documents were exactly the same. There was no difference. And then a significant amount of documents were also still highly redacted. And it wasn't just protecting victims' names. So that's completely against what the law says and what we're supposed to see in the Congress. In addition, we saw names that were redacted in what was released to the public. But then we were able to see some of the names of some pretty powerful people that had no business being redacted. And so we don't understand what's the explanation for redacting the names of powerful men, of men in business, some billionaires that we know of. Why are their names redacted where they're not survivors or victims? And so I think those are the questions that we have that we're still continuing to look at. I also went in specifically, there was about 37, 36 specific documents that I was looking for that relate to our investigation. I went in looking for all those. I found all of them. I made the appropriate notes for the investigation. And a chunk of those we'll be using in our deposition of Mr. Les Wexner next week.
Are you able to share any of the names that you found in those documents that are not released to the public?
Some of them are important to the investigation. And so we will be putting that information when it's appropriate. What I will say is, for example, with Mr. Wexner, a lot of folks are talking about Mr. Wexner, his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, why some of that information was redacted. I have no idea, but some pretty, I think, stunning accusations of how Jeffrey Epstein made his money from Mr. Wexner, why Mr. Wexner was giving him unlimited resources. And so I think that the deposition will uncover a lot of what were in these files that were redacted that we were able to actually see. And so those are being turned into questions for Mr. Wexner.
Can you explain just for listeners who Les Wexner is and how he's wrapped up in the Epstein files?
So Les Wexner is a very powerful, very wealthy billionaire businessman from Ohio, has donated enormous amounts of money to Ohio universities, Ohio State, was a kind of a fashion magnate, ran Victoria's Secret, Abercrombie and Fitch, led that organization, and really has been disgraced for a lot of really, I think, kind of laudy activity with folks within those organizations. There's a lot of accusations. But more importantly, as it relates to this case, he provided Epstein with significant amounts of money, and we're not sure for what. Epstein made most of his fortune off of Les Wexner. Wexner provided him with enormous amounts of funds, and we're not exactly sure where those funds went or what it went to. And so I think that is the key question is why was Wexner essentially the financial backer of Epstein and what did he know? And it appears from some of these documents that there was a very close relationship between these two and that Wexner, I think, knows a lot more than he's told the public.
I want to touch on too. You mentioned that you were upset with a lot of the redactions that were in the public documents. Obviously, in charge of this DOJ, Pam Bondi, she was in front of Congress today. I know it's not your committee, but want to know if you had a chance to review it or listen to her testimony and her questioning, and what did you make of it?
I mean, I have. I've been listening to a lot of it throughout the day. I mean, just really shameful. I, Look, I think not standing and turning to the survivors, at least to recognize them for being there in the audience and to share, any sympathy or empathy towards what they've been through. I think was really a disgusting moment. She was so aggressive in going after members of Congress, bringing up things that had nothing to do with the question line. She clearly was flustered. I think members went after her forcefully, rightly so. And I think it's clear that she continues to cover up for Donald Trump. She wasn't there as the lawyer for the people, for the Department of Justice, which is what she should be there. She was there as a lawyer to Donald Trump. And that's not the job of the attorney general. Your client is not the president. Your client is the United States. And so I think that was very apparent. She is there to protect and serve Donald Trump. And I think that was clear today.
Y'all are still trying to work out the nitty gritty of the details. Bill and Hillary Clinton are set to sit for a deposition. There are other high profile Democrats that are named in the files. How are you approaching that?
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't really care what party people are in. Obviously, we've been saying we want to hear from Bill Clinton for a long time. Larry Summers has faced already some, I think, pretty serious consequences as a result of being in those files. Bill Gates is someone that we want to speak with. I've talked to James Comer about that. There's a lot of interest about kind of some of the allegations that are in those files. And so the political parties really of little interest to us is we just want to know, what do these men know about what happened? Were any of them involved in the trafficking of women? And there's a lot of men in these files and a lot of powerful men. And those are the folks that we want to talk to. And we're going through and interviewing and getting testimony and also talking to survivors, of course.
You mentioned James Comer. He had a historically bad relationship with his previous ranking member, Jamie Raskin. What is your relationship like with him?
We have a working relationship. I mean, look, we disagree on almost everything as it relates to politics and governance. But at the end of the day, you have to work with the chair. And as the ranking member, it's my job to facilitate meetings that we can, share information. When there is opportunity to work together, we're going to do that. So we do have a working relationship. We push back on each other and I certainly fight and push back when we need to. We're always going to hold them accountable for what they're doing.
Can we expect to see any other subpoenas? And if so, of who, if you're able to share, regarding people named in these Epstein files or people related to Epstein, close to him, etc., that we could be seeing coming from the Oversight Committee?
I mean, you will. I mean, we have a long list of people we want to talk to. We've provided that list to Republicans. We're hoping that there are a lot more subpoenas. There's a lot of folks that we want to understand why they were in Epstein's orbit as much as they were. Look, I just mentioned Mr. Gates. He's someone that I think both Republicans and Democrats want to speak to. I think there are numerous people in the government. I mean, think about Steve Bannon, for example. We should talk to Steve Bannon. He clearly was palling around with Epstein. That's someone that we should hear from. Elon Musk seems to have information and was pretty confident in Steve Bannon's involvement and some of what Epstein was doing. It'd be great to get testimony and information about what Mr. Musk might know. So I think there's a lot of information out there that we need to gather and collect still. And so I think that's whether Republicans do it or that we have to do it, we get to the majority. I don't want to wait that long. I think we should get it done now. I think that's what's ahead for us.
Definitely. Let's pivot to your journey to Congress. You are in your second term here, and tell me about how you got into politics.
I ran for city council in my early 30s, got elected in Long Beach, California. And then after my first term on the council, I ran for mayor of the city. Our mayor had decided not to seek another term. And so at the time, there had been no one, my age or certainly as new to kind of city government as I was. And I was in a race with a bunch of veterans, but we worked really hard, got elected mayor, and I served as mayor for 8 years in my city in Long Beach. And then my congressman, who represented essentially Long Beach and some other cities adjacent to Long Beach, retired right when I was ending my term as mayor. So I decided I could have either ran for mayor one more time or run for Congress. And that's when I decided to run for Congress. And so it's been obviously I'm new to Congress as it relates to, folks and their longevity here, but it's been met some really great people, and it's obviously an honor to serve my community. And I feel that I do represent my constituents back home and their views about how they want to be represented.
That seems like a theme with you. Is this you were in city council, you right after your first term, you run for mayor, Congress, you were right after your first term, now you're ranking member. I know a lot of members are timid. They're like, "Oh, I'm not gonna run for X position. I haven't been here long enough to do that." How do you feel get I don't know, the courage to put yourself out there even if you haven't been there so long to run for a higher position?
I don't believe a lot in like waiting your turn or seniority. I think that we should elevate folks that can meet that moment and what's required, that have maybe a skill set. And I think whether it was when I ran for mayor, I really believe that was the best person to lead the city at that time, and that the city needed a new perspective that had not been in government forever, and that represented like the next generation of folks growing up in the community versus folks that were running that had been in the city, quite frankly, for a very long time. And that's why I think I won. And I think the same thing when I ran for ranking member, what I told the caucus was, like, I respect the wisdom that experience brings, but this era of Trump, we need a fighter that is going to push, be aggressive, and communicate our message every day. And that's what I think brought to the table. And that's why I think I won.
Stay with us as we'll be right back with more on Notice after a quick break.
Behind every BP fill-up, thousands of people across America go to work every day. People producing energy offshore, people turning it into products at our refineries, people doing R&D to make products that are better for your engine, people trading and shipping fuels to their destinations, and the people who help you at one of BP's growing family of retail stations. They're part of almost 300,000 jobs we support across the country. Just a few of the ways BP is investing in America.
Was politics something you were always interested in even prior to running for city council, or kind of what spurred that? What spurred you being like, "Oh, I'm gonna get into this"?
I was involved in like student government in college. I was always kind of interested. And then I didn't become a citizen until my early 20s. When my family first and I became US citizens, we were really like a lot of immigrants. Like, we loved Ronald Reagan. Like, Ronald Reagan was the president who signed the amnesty bill that actually got us all a pathway to citizenship. So a lot of immigrants from kind of my era, certainly from South America, had this affinity for Ronald Reagan. And so we loved Ronald Reagan. My whole family registered as Republicans, not because like everybody knew what Republicans stood for per se, but because there was this admiration of President Reagan at the time. And then obviously after a period of time, my whole family became Democrats. I think, you kind of grow into who you are politically, but we always were kind of just interested. And I always was interested in it because of the process of citizenship, which is really like, we tried to become citizens for a really long time. And it didn't happen for me till I got to college. And when I ran for student body president, I was a student body president in college. I wasn't a US citizen. I mean, I was still in the process of gaining citizenship. And so I got those opportunities to lead. And then I went into education, I graduate degree, and I taught, was a college administrator. And then that just naturally connected me to the community and kind of how it all happened.
That's amazing. That's a great story. You are one of a number of LGBTQ plus members of Congress, and some of your work involves LGBTQ rights here and abroad. What's it been like doing that work in Congress, and how do you get support from Democrats in this work on LGBTQ issues, since to some of their support caucus have been shying away from that since the 2024 election?
Well, I think that LGBTQ plus people should never be used as pawns. The struggle is real for a lot of folks, and I think it's my job as a gay person to represent the broader community. Just as a Latino, I represent the Latino community, and I think it's important for us to be engaged in those issues because if we're not engaged in pushing, then what model are we and what example are we sending to the rest of folks in Congress? And it is harder. I come from a pretty progressive community. I think Long Beach is very forward when it relates to rights for LGBTQ plus people. I certainly was when I was mayor. I was the first openly gay mayor the city had elected. So I think that, well, the city was already pretty supportive of the community, and getting to Congress, it's been hard to deal with some people that are, quite frankly, really homophobic and don't think gay people should have many rights at all. And I see the way people, for example, treat Sarah McBride, and it drives me insane. I just don't know how anyone can be so cruel the way they treat her. She would be treated back home in my community just like anybody else. And so that part's been hard, but we still got to push forward.
How do you deal with that? There are, to your point, a significant number of Republican members that are very hostile towards the LGBTQ plus community. How do you wrestle with that, deal with that when you have to interact with these people pretty much on a daily basis?
Look, I think for some folks that are really awful, I don't engage or have a relationship with. I mean, I think what some folks have done to Sarah, for example, have been disgusting. People talk a lot about and lionize Marjorie Taylor Greene in her last few months, and I appreciate the changes she made, but I'm not going to forget the way she treated LGBTQ plus people and how she berated and talked them down oftentimes in front of me at hearings, and refusing to acknowledge gay parents as actual parents. And this is a lot of horrible things she said. And at some point, I hope that she apologizes for those things, and I hope that she has grown beyond those. But that's emblematic of other members of Congress as well. And so I try to stay away from those folks. I'm not going to value my basic humanity. I don't have a lot of interest in working on legislation or partnerships with you. So that part becomes more difficult.
And then one final question. You are a huge Bravo and Real Housewives super fan. I have never watched Real Housewives or Bravo for that matter, but you did go viral for using Heather Gay's iconic line saying receipts, proof, timeline, and screenshots in an oversight hearing. Did you know that would go as viral as it did?
I didn't actually. I've been watching Real Housewives for a long time, and I thought it would be fun to add because it kind of met the topic. And I thought, like some of the Bravo fans would get it, but I didn't think it would get out as far as it did. And so I'm glad. I mean, I've tried to incorporate pop culture when appropriate to what we're doing because it reaches a different audience. And I think we can't just talk to the people in our bubble. We've got to break through and reach folks through pop culture. And so if there's opportunities to appear in spaces and talk to folks that are reaching a different audience, I always try to do that.
Don't fact check me, but I think you might be the first member of Congress to go sit down with Andy Cohen at the Bravo studios there.
Yeah, I think that probably is right. Yeah.
Well, Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate you coming on the show.
Sure thing. Thanks.
On Notice is a production of Notice and is hosted by me, Reese Gorman. This show is produced by Notice and the team at the Podglomerate. Special thanks to Kate Nocera and Justin Pellegrini. We'd love to hear your thoughts. You can send us a note at podcast@notus.com. And if you like this episode, leave us a good review on Apple Podcasts. See you next week.
Behind the delivery trucks that keep your life stocked, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People bringing a new offshore production platform online. People making our refineries capable of more, like making renewable diesel from agricultural waste. People trading and shipping fuels to our customers. And people helping truckers fill up and get maintenance at our convenient locations. They're part of almost 300,000 jobs we support across the country. Just a few of the ways BP is investing in America.